Hi, it's Dr. Lisa Ann Homick from Homick Advanced Chiropractic, and this is Brain Snob, episode number 77. Welcome to the episode. I'm glad you're here. What does immune compromise actually mean? I want to go into that today and help explain that the physiological parts of the human body and why we would call a person immune compromised. Why do they have a weak immune system? Because I truly believe we can strengthen our immune system. We don't just have to say, I'm immune compromised and I need to stay in the house. I should not do this. I should not do that. Because now you are isolating yourself. You are keeping yourself away from full life enjoyment. So I want to define what that actually means so people can take a little more empowering actions to improve their lives, because I personally believe it's not set in stone. If you're not chronically at a point of disease where you're terminal, you can improve your immune function, and I'm going to explain that right now. But in so many words, your immune system is constantly stressed. There is no time for healing. We heal. We've got the healing power within us. And sometimes there are things in our environment that are constantly there, eroding that healing response. If you can't even rest and feel rested, you cannot heal. You cannot rebuild. And there are things that get in the way of that. This interference needs to be understood, because then you can take steps to reduce that interference. So there's a considerable damage to a person's immune system. I would even say soft tissue damage, where the organs are impaired so they can't respond to stress, and just a considerable amount of inflammation, because when that is occurring, the body just can't keep up. It's just like a flood getting in your house, and you can try to sweep the water out, but more water's coming in. It's just endless. And that's what an immune compromised person is dealing with. There just seems to be no end to this weather pattern that's invading their home. And there's constant insult that the body can't wall itself off from. It can't protect itself from. And I'm going to give you the common denominator as to why people are immune compromised. And I'm going to call it poison. Because if your body is poisoned, it is trapped. It is stuck. If you drink enough poison, yes, you are going to die. You're not going to survive that. Your body cannot cleanse itself quickly enough before the organs shut down. So we have to look at the poison in our environment, in our lifestyle, because that is something we have to get under control. And sometimes people aren't aware of what's actually attacking them, but we can narrow it down to these poisons. So continue listening, stick around, and let's see if we can make sense of it. But when someone says immune compromise, one of the first things you think of is somebody who is injured by a vaccination. I would call it vaccine intoxication, because there are chemicals in a vaccine that the body may not be able to detox and get rid of efficiently. And there, it's trapped in the tissues, especially the brain. So we do know that people can be seriously injured from vaccines. Sometimes it's permanent. Another example would be somebody who had an organ transplant, and they have to take anti-rejection drugs so that organ can stay stable, because it's a foreign object to that body. That body knows it. That liver doesn't belong to me. That kidney does not belong to me. And you have to constantly take anti-rejection drugs to trick the nervous system. And they actually depress the immune system. That's a poison. Even though there's a balance there trying to keep somebody functioning, it is still a toxic poison. Another example is somebody who's on chemotherapy. They're in cancer therapy, and the chemotherapy is very strong, very, very tough poisons on the body. So you've heard the term chemo brain. You've heard that there's a lot of neuropathy that people get from chemotherapy treatment. That too is another poison that we need to understand. Thyroid dysfunction, that's often called an autoimmune disorder, and there are toxic insults to the thyroid. A lot of it comes from dietary insults, possibly decades of eating certain foods that are just not agreeable with the body. And a lot of it is coming from plant toxins. I know that might be a new word to you, but there are anti-nutrients within the plant world that can cause an autoimmune response in people's bodies. I'll name some: lectins, gluten, oxalates, phytates, glucosinolates, and tannins. That's a short list. I'm not going to go into them in detail today, but there are considerable toxins in these plants. Not to mention processed foods are highly toxic with different chemicals for preservatives, or just the chemical processing to make these foods tasty and delicious and have a long shelf life. And that they do attack the thyroid, and that is an autoimmune response where the thyroid can be injured, that now you're often, every little thing disturbs your healing system. Also, we can mention radioactive exposure. That can cause somebody to have immune weakness. And then there is the non-ionizing radiation from the EMFs. That also is a type of poisoning. And everybody has a different response, a different reaction. But we need to understand that these are poisonings that are affecting the body. So let me talk about another type of poisoning from mechanical trauma. And this might sound a little bit odd to you, but it's still important to understand, because mechanical trauma can cause a self-poisoning. What do I mean by that? Because as a chiropractor, I often see people with back pain, neck pain, headaches, and injuries. And if you do have a severe enough injury, you can have disc fluid leaking from your spine. Your spinal discs, they leak, and they cause an immune reaction in the body. They're not supposed to leave the disc. They're supposed to stay nice and tight in their little annular fibers. They can leak. Once they exit the disc, it becomes a foreign liquid to the body, and there's an immune response. And sometimes the theory of fibromyalgia is this is ongoing, and people with fibromyalgia have just lots of chronic pain, and the source coming from that spinal area that has been considerably damaged. I call it a self-poisoning just to make the idea a little bit easier to understand, because it's going to cause an immune response, and it's sometimes long-term, sometimes it's lifelong on people. And that inflammation response just becomes chronic. Along with the other stresses of life, the inflammation is just long-standing. The old cells of inflammation, that causes a response. The body wants to get rid of these old cells. If you have cell death from metabolism, cell death from tissue damage, the body has to get rid of it. And if it's having a difficult time, if it's already bogged down with stress, then these cells are going to hang around, and that's foreign. Even though it came from your own cells, once they reach a point of not being useful and they're not being recycled, they're hanging around and they're causing problems, and the body is just going to constantly have that immune response. And so these types of injuries can also cause an immune weakness. Now, some people recover very well, some people not so well. Some people will say, I'm all right most of the time, but I have recurrences of this old injury will sneak up on the person when there's certain amounts of stress, or they're doing a repetitive motion type of exercise, so they kind of rehash that old injury, so the inflammation is just ready to go, bombarding the body as if it's been still there, as if the accident or the injury never healed. So I want people to understand that this immune compromise can be improved. And if you look at the different nutritional ways, because if you have nutrient deficiency, you're going to feel like you never catch up. So we need to address it nutritionally. We need to address it mechanically to make sure you're moving properly and you're still able to walk and be active. So mechanically we address it chiropractically because it also helps heal brain function, and the brain is what is going to control that immune response. We want the brain to have accurate information so it's not creating an immune response. We want to also have good stress management as a way to help that brain calm down this overactive inflammation. But a lot of it comes from nutrition because we tend to get into our habits of eating certain foods, not realizing they may not be the best for our bodies. And we all know processed foods are we shouldn't be doing that, but there are also foods we consider healthy that are actually getting in the way of healing. And so that is almost like a new health avenue, educating people on the right nutrition and also the right kind of supplements. Where should your supplements be sourced from? Because that's just as important. So I want to cut the video down here and end it because I just wanted to give you a quick definition of immune compromise. Long term, people just don't heal well, and we want you to have the best healing power going. You're born with it. Your body's always trying to find that balance. It's always seeking homeostasis. But when the stresses are too much, the body can't catch up. I teach people how to get the body to catch up. I teach them how to use their brain function in order to do that. That's the Brain First Always protocol. And I do the BFA coaching because we can customize it to your individualized situation and make sense of it. And you've already got the tools. I teach you how to be more proficient with those tools. You've got them, but you got to use them properly. So I'm so glad you hung around for this video and understanding what immune compromise actually means, because I want you to strengthen your immune system. I believe that can be done. And I want you to be a brain snob so you can be that positive ripple effect in your community. Thanks for watching, and look for the next video.